Imagine building the biggest passenger plane in the world, spending a staggering $25 billion on a project designed to compete with Boeing's legendary 747s. At that time, the 747 was already dominating the skies, ruling the long-haul market with almost no real rival. A plane so iconic and GOAT in its class that nothing else even came close. Then, in 2005, Airbus finally unveiled its dream. It was a long-running project built to challenge Boeing's iconic 747, called A380. Airbus launched it with the ambition to revolutionize air travel forever. A double-deck giant capable of carrying over 800 passengers, offering luxury lounges, showers, and bars in the sky. It was marketed as the future of aviation. But today, this engineering marvel is almost gone, and hardly anyone noticed. Airbus officially ended the production of the A380 in 2021, marking the end of its 18-year production run. In stark contrast, the Boeing 747 enjoyed an incredible 55 years of continuous production from 1968 to 2023, truly cementing its status as the queen of the skies. Out of the 251 Airbus A380s ever built, around 10% have already been permanently retired or scrapped, and many more are in long-term storage, waiting for uncertain futures. A plane once hailed as the future of flying is now slowly fading from the skies. So what went wrong? The problem wasn't the plane, it was the timing. When the A380 was first conceived in the 1990s, Airbus had a clear vision of the future of air travel. Back then, they believed the world would rely heavily on the hub-to-hub model, where thousands of passengers would be flown into massive mega airports like Dubai, Heathrow, Singapore, and Frankfurt before connecting to smaller flights for their final destinations. The A380 was built exactly for that purpose. It was designed to carry more than 800 passengers in a single trip, reducing congestion at crowded airports by moving as many people as possible in one go. Airbus imagined a future where giant planes would rule the skies, flying between a few key hubs, while smaller aircraft handled the regional connections. And at the time, this strategy made sense. Global air travel was booming, airport slots were limited, and airlines were competing to offer the biggest, most luxurious experience in the air. The A380 seemed like the perfect solution, a plane so massive, so advanced, that it promised to redefine the way we travel long distances. But while Airbus was betting on the hub-to-hub future, the aviation industry was quietly shifting in the opposite direction, and that miscalculation became one of the A380's biggest downfalls. Airlines began shifting away from the traditional hub-to-hub model. They started favoring point-to-point travel, where passengers could fly directly between cities without stopping at major hubs. For travelers, this meant shorter journeys, less waiting time, and fewer layovers. For airlines, it was even more important. Point-to-point routes were cheaper to operate and easier to fill, especially with the rise of mid-sized fuel-efficient twin-engine jets. Planes like the Boeing 787 Dreamliner and Airbus A350 could fly long distances just like the A380, but at a fraction of the cost and with fewer empty seats to worry about. Airlines no longer needed a giant like the A380 to carry 800 passengers at once into a single hub. Instead, they could operate more frequent flights on smaller aircraft, connecting secondary cities directly and giving passengers more choices. What Airbus thought was the future of aviation, super jumbos dominating megahubs, was suddenly becoming outdated before the A380 even reached its peak. But the A380's problems didn't end there. Operating such a massive aircraft came with an enormous price tag. The A380's four-engine design made it far less fuel-efficient compared to modern twin-engine jets, driving operating costs sky-high. On top of that, maintenance expenses were significantly higher, from specialized spare parts to dedicated ground crews and custom-built airport gates. The A380 was expensive to keep flying. Then came COVID-19, and the impact was devastating. In early 2020, global passenger traffic collapsed overnight, and airlines were forced to make hard decisions about which aircraft to keep and which to ground. The A380, being one of the most expensive planes to operate, was among the first to be retired or stored. Airlines like Air France, Lufthansa, and Singapore Airlines permanently grounded much of their A380 fleets within months. Even Emirates, the largest A380 operator in the world, had to slash operations and delay refurbishments. For many carriers, bringing back the A380 after the pandemic just didn't make financial sense. With passenger demand lower and fuel prices rising, more efficient aircraft like the 787 and A350 became the obvious choice. In short, the very features that made the A380 a luxury giant also became its biggest weaknesses. Its high maintenance, huge fuel consumption, and limited route flexibility. And after COVID-19, the industry simply moved on without it. Perhaps one of the biggest missed opportunities for the A380 was cargo. The Boeing 747 didn't just dominate passenger travel, it conquered the cargo market. Even when passenger demand dropped, airlines converted hundreds of 747s into freighters, keeping the aircraft profitable for decades. It became the backbone of global logistics, carrying everything from electronics to vaccines, even racehorses and satellites. The A380, on the other hand, was never designed with cargo in mind. Its double-deck structure and thick floor reinforcements made it too heavy for efficient freight operations. Airbus had planned an A380 freighter variant, but after multiple delays and a lack of airline interest, the project was quietly canceled in 2006. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, this decision came back to haunt Airbus. While the 747 freighters became aviation's lifeline, transporting essential supplies when passenger travel collapsed, the A380 sat parked in deserts, burning cash instead of generating revenue. Without a viable cargo role, airlines had no reason to keep the A380 flying, accelerating its decline even further. But Airbus didn't give up easily. As orders began slowing down, they tried multiple strategies to save the program. New cabin layouts, better seating configurations, and lighter materials to reduce operating costs. They even proposed the A380 Plus, an upgraded version with better aerodynamics and new winglets designed to improve fuel efficiency by up to 4%. But there was one big problem: airlines simply weren't interested. By then, carriers had already shifted investments towards smaller, more versatile aircraft. The rising popularity of the A350, Airbus's own twin-engine, fuel-efficient jet, made the A380 look like a costly relic. Even Emirates, the largest A380 customer, pushed Airbus to develop an improved version to keep the program alive. For a while, Airbus considered stretching production to keep Emirates happy, but with no other major buyers and rising costs, it became unsustainable. By 2019, Airbus made the painful decision to end the A380 program and shift its focus toward next-generation aircraft like the A350 and A321XLR, planes that better match the evolving needs of airlines and passengers. The A350 quickly became the flagship of Airbus's future, a lighter, quieter, and far more efficient aircraft capable of long-haul flights without the massive overhead of a four-engine giant. In many ways, the A350 became everything the A380 couldn't be, and that's where Airbus decided to place its bets. The Airbus A380 will always be remembered as one of aviation's most ambitious dreams, a flying giant that pushed the limits of engineering and redefined what was possible in the skies. It was bold. It was beautiful. And for a brief moment in history, it made the world look up and believe in bigger possibilities. But the skies move fast, and the future of aviation doesn't always favor size. While the A380 story may have ended sooner than Airbus ever imagined, its impact will never be forgotten. It inspired a new generation of engineers, reshaped airports, and gave millions of passengers an experience they'll cherish forever. And now, as the industry shifts towards smaller, smarter, and more efficient aircraft like the A350 and Boeing 787, the A380 stands as a reminder that even the greatest giants must eventually step aside to make way for the future. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the shifting landscape of global aviation, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It helps us bring you more in-depth aviation stories, and together we can make the aviation community even stronger. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you on the next flight.